The graduation day was finally here, a moment every senior had been counting down to for years. Meadow Ridge High's auditorium was bustling with life, students lining up backstage, parents filling the seats in the audience, and the occasional booming laugh of someone sharing an old memory. For most of the seniors, this was a day of triumph and celebration. But for Anna Keller, standing nervously behind the curtain in her navy blue cap and gown, there was a bittersweet weight on her heart. Anna had every reason to be proud. She had worked tirelessly, balancing advanced classes, sports, and even part-time jobs to help her mom, Julie. All the while, she carried the invisible but heavy burden of being a soldier's daughter. Her father, Staff Sergeant Ryan Keller, had been deployed overseas for nearly 2 years. Though she knew the nature of his job and the importance of his service, his absence left a hollow ache in her chest, especially on days like today. Anna straightened her cap, exhaling deeply. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, stealing a glance at the crowded audience beyond the curtain. She spotted her mother sitting in the third row, clutching her purse in one hand and a tissue in the other. Julie had always been her rock, but Anna knew this day was hard on her too. For months, they had both secretly wished Ryan could be here to witness her biggest milestone yet. They'd spent hours trying to adjust to life without him, masking the quiet, lonely moments with calls, letters, and photos that never quite filled the void. The principal's voice echoed from the stage, welcoming the audience and kicking off the event. Anna's heart thudded in her chest as the ceremony began, and she filed out with her classmates, taking her seat in the designated row. The sound of the band playing softly in the background and the constant applause from the crowd blurred into the background as her thoughts drifted. Despite her sadness, Anna knew her father would be proud of her. She had made it this far, standing tall as a representation of everything he had taught her: resilience, perseverance, and grace under pressure. Still, she couldn't stop wishing that he were here to see her walk across the stage. For her, he wasn't just her dad. He was her hero. What Anna didn't know, however, was that her father had been planning something extraordinary for her. After nearly 2 years of deployment in the Middle East, Sergeant Keller had finally been granted leave to return home. And when his wife, Julie, told him about Anna's graduation, he had one goal: to be there. But this wasn't just going to be any reunion. Julie had kept the secret tightly guarded, carefully coordinating every detail. Ryan's arrival coincided with an exciting twist. Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, was scheduled to speak at the event as the keynote guest. Julie, knowing Barron would be an influential figure at the ceremony, reached out to his team with a heartfelt request to make her daughter's day unforgettable. To her amazement, Barron himself agreed to help, and a plan was put into motion. As Anna sat in the audience, she had no idea that backstage, her father stood just a few feet away. Dressed in his crisp military uniform, Ryan was a bundle of nerves. He'd faced countless challenges in his military career, but this moment felt different. His hands trembled slightly as he straightened his jacket, and his heart raced with anticipation. Beside him stood Barron, calm and collected, offering a reassuring nod. "She's going to love this," he said, a faint smile on his face. Together, they rehearsed the details one last time, determined to make the surprise seamless. The principal continued with the ceremony, calling students' names and delivering awards, but Ryan couldn't hear a word. His mind was solely focused on Anna. He pictured her as the little girl who would run to greet him when he came home from training, her laughter filling the house. Now she was nearly grown, standing on the cusp of a new chapter, and he was determined to be a part of it. The ceremony carried on as students proudly walked across the stage to receive their diplomas, their families cheering and clapping in the audience. Anna sat quietly in her seat, her fingers fiddling with the edges of her program. She clapped for her classmates and smiled when the principal shared anecdotes about their achievements, but a sense of emptiness gnawed at her. Julie, seated in the third row, glanced back at her daughter every few minutes, her heart bursting with anticipation. She had barely slept the night before, knowing the surprise that awaited Anna. Julie had always been the glue that held the family together during Ryan's deployments, but the past 2 years had been the hardest. Watching Anna grow up without her father around for milestones like her junior prom or soccer championship had been painful, but she admired her daughter's strength. Today, she couldn't wait to see Anna's face light up in a way it hadn't in a long time. Backstage, Ryan Keller adjusted his military jacket once more and took a deep, steadying breath. He had gone over this moment in his head countless times, but the nerves still hit him like a wave. Standing beside him, Barron Trump offered a calm and reassuring presence. Despite being in the public eye, Barron had a quiet, grounded demeanor that Ryan found comforting. "Trust me," Barron said with a small smile. "This is going to be something she'll never forget." Ryan chuckled, though his hands were clammy with anticipation. "I just hope she doesn't pass out from the shock," he joked. Barron laughed. "Let's give her a moment she'll talk about for the rest of her life." The two of them had spent the last few hours going over the plan, and everything was now perfectly in place. Ryan would wait backstage until Barron was halfway through his keynote speech, then step onto the stage at the perfect moment. Ryan felt a surge of gratitude toward the young man who had agreed to help make this day so special. Barron's willingness to get involved spoke volumes about his character, and Ryan couldn't have done this without him. Meanwhile, Anna's thoughts drifted as the ceremony went on. She clapped when her classmates' names were called and smiled politely at the speeches, but her mind kept circling back to her father. She wondered what he would have said if he were here. Maybe something corny, like how proud he was and how she'd always be his little girl, no matter how old she got. The thought made her chest tighten, and she blinked back the tears threatening to spill. The principal's voice suddenly boomed over the microphone. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce today's keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming Barron Trump to the stage." The room erupted in applause as Barron walked onto the stage, his tall frame commanding attention. Anna sat up a little straighter, surprised by the excitement in the crowd. She had known Barron would be speaking, but she hadn't paid much attention to the details. Now, as he adjusted the microphone and began his speech, she found herself listening intently. "Good afternoon, everyone," Barron began, his voice steady and confident. "Today, we're here to celebrate your hard work, your perseverance, and the incredible journey you've all been on. Graduation isn't just a milestone. It's a reminder that every challenge you've faced has made you stronger." Anna listened as Barron continued, weaving stories about resilience and community into his speech. His words struck a chord with her, and for the first time that day, she felt a small spark of pride. Maybe it wasn't the same as hearing her dad say it, but it still felt meaningful. Then, Barron paused, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Before I go on, I'd like to take a moment to highlight a very special graduate sitting here today. This person represents the true meaning of resilience and strength. Anna Keller, could you please stand?" Anna froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Did she hear that right? The sound of murmurs rippled through the audience as she slowly stood, her cheeks flushed with confusion and embarrassment. She glanced at her mom, who was smiling through tears, then back at Barron, who looked directly at her from the stage. "You've faced challenges most of us can't imagine," Barron said, his voice kind and sincere. "And today, we want to honor you for your perseverance. But that's not all. We have a little surprise for you." The auditorium fell silent. Anna's eyes darted around, her confusion growing. Suddenly, from the side of the stage, a tall figure stepped into the spotlight. He was dressed in full military uniform, his boots clicking softly against the polished floor as he walked toward the center of the stage. Anna gasped audibly, her hands flying to her mouth. Her knees felt weak as she whispered, "Dad?" Anna launched herself into her father's arms, gripping him tightly as though he might vanish if she let go. Her cap lay forgotten on the stage floor, but she didn't care. The warmth of her dad's embrace, the familiar scent of his uniform, and the feel of his strong arms around her brought a flood of emotions she couldn't contain. "You're here," she sobbed into his chest, her voice muffled. "I can't believe you're really here." Ryan held her just as tightly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I wouldn't miss this for the world, Anna," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." The audience, initially stunned into silence, erupted into cheers and applause. The thunderous sound filled the room, but Anna barely registered it. For her, the world had shrunk to this single moment with her father, a moment she had dreamed of for months. From the third row, Julie dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her heart full as she watched the two people she loved most in the world reunited. She had known this moment would be emotional, but even she hadn't anticipated how overwhelming it would feel. Julie glanced at the stage where Barron Trump stood nearby, clapping along with the audience. She silently thanked him for helping pull off a surprise her daughter would never forget. On stage, Anna finally pulled back, her hands still gripping her father's arms as though to confirm he was real. Tears streamed down her face, but a smile as bright as the sun lit up her features. How is this even possible? She stammered, shaking her head in disbelief. Ryan chuckled, his own eyes glistening. It wasn't easy. I'll tell you that. Your mom and I planned this for months, and we had a little help, he said, nodding toward Barron. Anna turned, her gaze shifting to the young man standing nearby. She had barely noticed him during the ceremony, but now, seeing the knowing smile on his face, it all clicked. Her cheeks flushed with gratitude. Thank you, Anna said, her voice still shaky. I can't believe you helped make this happen. Barron stepped forward, his expression warm but humble. It was all your dad, he said with a shrug. I just helped him make it a little more special. You deserve this moment. Anna felt a swell of gratitude she couldn't put into words. She turned back to her father, her tears returning as she hugged him again. For a moment, the room seemed to disappear, and all she could think about was how complete she finally felt. The principal approached the microphone, waiting patiently for the applause to settle down. Well, I think it's safe to say this is one of the most memorable graduation moments we've ever had, he said with a smile, prompting another round of clapping from the crowd. Anna, your father's sacrifice and service, as well as your own strength and resilience, are an inspiration to us all. Congratulations to both of you. Ryan and Anna stepped aside as the ceremony resumed, but now the weight in Anna's chest had lifted completely. She sat back down in her seat, her dad joining her in the audience, and everything felt perfect. As the ceremony continued, Anna couldn't stop glancing at her father seated beside her. Every time her eyes met his, she felt a swell of emotion so strong, it almost brought tears to her eyes all over again. She didn't care about the occasional glances from her classmates or the whispers of surprise in the rows behind her. All that mattered was that her dad was here. Ryan, for his part, sat with his hands resting on his knees, soaking in the moment. It had been so long since he'd seen his daughter in person, so long since he'd been part of her world outside of video calls and letters. He marveled at how much she'd grown in just 2 years. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She was a young woman, full of grace and determination. He felt a pang of guilt for all the milestones he had missed, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride. Anna leaned closer to him, whispering, I can't believe you're here. I thought you wouldn't be back for months. Ryan turned to her, his expression soft. It wasn't easy to pull off, he admitted. But I couldn't let you walk across that stage without me here to cheer you on. You've earned this, Anna. You've worked so hard, and I needed to see it for myself. Anna smiled, blinking back fresh tears. It hasn't been the same without you, she said quietly. I know, Ryan said, his voice heavy. And I'm sorry for every moment I missed, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere for a while. The weight of those words settled in Anna's heart like a warm embrace. She had been so accustomed to missing her father, to preparing herself for the reality of his absence, that hearing him say he was staying felt like a gift she didn't know she could hope for. Meanwhile, Barron Trump had taken his seat near the front of the stage, watching the father-daughter reunion from a distance. Despite his role as a guest speaker, he felt humbled by the moment. It reminded him of the sacrifices military families made every day, something he had witnessed during his father's presidency but never truly understood until now. As the principal called the final group of students to the stage, the energy in the room shifted to anticipation. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the distribution of diplomas. Anna felt her nerves return, but this time they were mixed with excitement. She glanced at her dad again, her heart soaring at the thought of walking across the stage with him watching from the audience. Finally, her name was called. Anna Keller, the principal announced, his voice carrying through the auditorium. Anna rose from her seat, smoothing her gown as she made her way to the stage. The applause was thunderous, but what stood out the most to her was the sound of her father clapping louder than anyone else. She caught his eye in the crowd, his expression glowing with pride, and she couldn't help but smile through the lump in her throat. As she shook the principal's hand and accepted her diploma, the moment felt surreal. This was the culmination of years of hard work, late nights and sacrifices, not just hers, but her family's too. She turned toward the audience and held the diploma up with a triumphant smile. Her father stood, clapping with his hands high above his head, his pride evident. The sight of him there, alive and safe, made the achievement 10 times more meaningful. For Anna, this wasn't just her victory, it was theirs. When the last graduate had walked across the stage, the ceremony concluded with a rousing cheer. The band played a triumphant tune as caps flew into the air, students embracing each other and their families in celebration. Anna carefully made her way through the crowd to find her dad and mom, who were standing together near the auditorium doors. Ryan pulled her into another hug, his arms strong and comforting. "You did it, sweetheart," he said. Anna smiled up at him. "We did it, Dad." The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the front lawn of Meadow Ridge High. Graduates and their families had spilled out of the auditorium, the air buzzing with laughter, congratulatory shouts, and camera flashes. Anna stood with her parents just outside the school entrance, her diploma tucked safely under her arm. She couldn't stop smiling, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Ryan had one arm wrapped around Anna's shoulders, holding her close as though he were afraid she might slip away. Julie stood on his other side, her eyes glistening with happiness. The three of them felt whole again, a family reunited after what had felt like an eternity apart. "Let's get a picture," Julie said, pulling out her phone. "We need to remember this forever." Anna grinned and leaned into her father as Julie snapped the photo. Ryan stood tall in his uniform, his hand resting protectively on Anna's shoulder. To anyone passing by, it looked like a perfect portrait of love, pride, and resilience. After the photo, Anna turned to her father with a curious smile. "So, how did you actually pull this off? I still can't believe you're here." Ryan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Well, it wasn't easy," he admitted. "Your mom did most of the heavy lifting, and we had a little help from Barron." Anna glanced across the lawn, where Barron Trump was shaking hands and taking pictures with other graduates. She felt a swell of gratitude. "I still can't believe he was in on this," she said. Julie smiled knowingly. "When I reached out to his team, I wasn't sure they'd even respond. But as soon as they heard your story, they were all in. Barron especially. He said he wanted to make it unforgettable for you." Anna bit her lip, emotion welling up again. "It already was," she whispered. Just then, Barron made his way over to their small group, his tall frame unmistakable as he weaved through the crowd. He offered a polite smile as he approached. "Anna," he said, his tone warm, "congratulations again. You deserve every bit of this celebration." "Thank you," Anna said earnestly, "for everything. I don't even know how to thank you for helping my dad pull this off." Barron shrugged modestly. "You don't have to thank me. Seeing you two together was more than enough." He glanced at Ryan and gave him a firm handshake. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant Keller. It's an honor to have been a part of this." "The honor's mine," Ryan said sincerely. As Barron turned to leave, Anna couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by how much effort so many people had put into making her day special. For the first time in years, she felt like the luckiest person in the world. The three of them, Anna, Ryan, and Julie, lingered on the lawn as the crowd began to thin out. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered box. "I've been carrying this with me since I left," he said, his voice soft. "I wanted to give it to you when the time was right." Anna's curiosity piqued as she took the box and opened it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a star. "This was your grandmother's," Ryan said. "She gave it to me when I enlisted and told me it was meant to remind me of home. I think it's time it belongs to you." Anna's throat tightened as she gently picked up the necklace. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Ryan stepped closer and clasped it around her neck. "You're my star, Anna. No matter where I am, you'll always be my light." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Anna wrapped her arms around her father, her head resting against his chest. "I missed you so much," she said, her voice barely audible. "I missed you more," Ryan replied, holding her close. Julie stepped beside them, wrapping her arms around both of them. The three of them stood together, their family bond stronger than ever. For Anna, this wasn't just a graduation day. It was the day she got her dad back. As they walked to the car, the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Anna glanced at her father, her heart full. For the first time in a long time, she felt like everything was exactly as it should be, and she knew this was a moment she would carry with her forever.